So the one who said he would abide in his teachings be our guide. May we follow his glorious example and tread with unfaltering steps this noble path until we too shall attain enlightenment. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all honored ones, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, maha prajna paramita. Good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's good to see all of your faces and hear all of your voices. Tonight, I want to give a little talk that I'm calling Changing Seasons. And I was really struck by the abrupt change we've seen recently, this past week or so, at least here in Oregon. I don't know what's happening in other parts of the country, but at least here in Oregon, it's gotten markedly cooler. The rains have returned after a much needed, well, the rains are much needed. The summer was very dry. I think that's what I was trying to say. So it's starting to feel like fall. I feel it in my bones. I feel it in the cold in my fingertips and in my toes. I notice it in the little like head-sized pumpkin that showed up on my back stoop last night with a little curly stem. Everything is just screaming fall. So what I want to talk about tonight is I want to talk about our liturgical cycle. And I was thinking about this in terms of Wy'East Zen Center. I've long had this aspiration to bring some of our ceremonies into Wy'East, and was, I understood when we moved to Zoom, we needed to because of COVID, and I've sort of missed in-person practice. And, it just clicked recently. It's like, I want things to be a particular way. I want us to have a place where we can practice and do ceremonies together because I love ceremonies. And then I was like, well, there's also the flip side. I can bring these teachings of ceremonies and ritual and liturgical cycle and present them in such a way that you all, if you choose to, can take them up and have them at home. There is benefit in practicing together. There is benefit in learning ceremonial forms and how to get through a procession and all of the anxiety that comes up if you're presenting or being a jisha. But there's also a sweetness that comes in knowing that it's a special time of year, or knowing that for others who are practicing, there's a common theme coming up, knowing that, I want to add a little oomph into my practice. So a good day to do that might be X, Y, and Z. So I hope you'll bear with me as I do a quick go through our liturgical cycle, or at least the liturgical cycle that we hold at Dharma Rain. Brightway may be different. So for those of you who are familiar with both of those sanghas, we sort of come from the same stock, but might sometimes do things a little bit differently. So if things don't show up on the same dates or have the same name, like, don't worry about that. So the way I was taught about our liturgical cycle is it starts in the fall. It starts in September. And as we've been reading Kyogen's book, I believe we hit upon some of those chapters where he talks about turning towards practice in the fall. And sort of that natural turning in, that natural coming together after a summer spent all over the place. And at Dharma Rain, we have 2 3-month practice periods called Ango. One is September, October, November, and roughly the first week of December. And then the other one is in the spring, March, April, May. And the intense practice periods are really marked by, we sit earlier in the morning, we sit zazen before lunch. Um, the residents say an intention after breakfast. So we say what our intention for the day is, and we make a term vow. So those are sort of the things that mark this 90-day practice period. So we pick it up and we put it down. And that, for me, has been one of the greatest teachings of Ango. It's not so much the intensity of an intensive practice, but it's the picking up and putting down. Okay, now we're doing a little bit more. Now we're doing a little bit less. What does that feel like? That I'm not too worried about in relationship to Wy'East. We will do term student programs from time to time, which will involve taking a term vow. But I don't think those are tied to a particular time frame. So in terms of our liturgical cycle, the first real let's see, at the end of September, we have a Two Ancestors Memorial, which marks the death dates of Dogen and Keizan. So Dogen was a 13th century monk and Keizan was a 14th century monk. These are considered the mother and father of Soto Zen Buddhism. They're lineage ancestors that are held with reverence. Dogen was known for his writings and his philosophical work and his compilation of training rules. What we recited for evening service today was written by Dogen. And then Keizan came a little bit after him, and he created a lot of the ceremonies that are still used. And these ceremonies are designed to sort of walk people through Dharma teachings, really. And this is why I get so excited about wanting to bring ceremonies to Wy'East. It's just like, we get to walk through it. We get to use our body. It's not just sitting. We get to move through space. We get to make noise with instruments or light fires and burn things, or it's just a different way of engaging. So at the end of September, we honor Dogen and Keizan. At the end of October is a festival called Sejiki. And this is, it's really oriented around working with past karma and inviting in sort of those lingering hungry ghosts, and doing so in such a way that perhaps those beings or those aspects of ourself that long for the Dharma and just can't accept it finally can find a way to access it, because we really don't do a whole lot of explicit Dharma teaching. So in the Zendo, all of the Buddha images are covered. So anybody or any energy that's sort of leery of those images can enter in. They're all covered up. It's okay to come in. We invite them in. And we sit with this karma for several days. And then on the last night of retreat, this is all wraps around a multi-day retreat. At the last part of the retreat, there's a big bonfire. People have the opportunity to write down things that they would like to let go of. And those are offered into the fire. So this fire is this beautiful symbol of transformation. Like what goes into a fire is completely transformed. Completely transformed. Nothing is left over. At least not in its original shape. And also what gets burned in this fire at the end of this Sejiki retreat are the transfer of merit lists. And Wy'East has, these last several years, has somehow, I don't know how it happens, I'm usually in retreat, somehow Shokai manages to get the merit lists that have been saved over the past year to Dharma Ring. So they get offered into the fire as well. So all of these lists are saved and offered into the fire. And that's sort of our main fall celebration, festival, retreat. In December, in the beginning of December, we have what's probably the most significant retreat of the year, and this is Rohatsu. And this is often done as a sesshin, as a retreat. And I'm talking about what the temple is doing. I'm going to wrap around to like ways to invite this into home practice afterwards. But for now, I'm just sort of describing what happens at the temple. At Rohatsu, we have a multi-day retreat that is wrapped around December 8th. And so in our calendar, that's sort of the day we sort of put the pin on as the day that Shakyamuni Buddha was enlightened. And so this retreat tends to be very, not so much solemn as there's just a focus on effort, putting effort into your practice. And it's usually quite cold, being in December. So that retreat sort of marks the end of our intensive practice period for the fall. There's a big, like, after that's done, there's a little bit of a light practice, or the temple's closed for several weeks before New Year's Eve. And oftentimes, Dharma Rain and the Zen community of Oregon have held a joint event on New Year's Eve where the two sanghas get together. And in the past, we've shared, like pre-COVID, we've shared a potluck dinner and did some zazen and did some sacred dancing. And there's a ceremony at midnight. The bell is rung 108 times to represent the 108 mistakes we can make in Buddhism. Then after we start the new year, it's rung 108 times to represent the 108 virtues in Buddhism. I'm very bad with lists. Please don't ask me to name those 108 because I will not get them. So after the new year, usually precept study begins. And precept study will go a number of weeks. It's something that the whole Sangha does together. So whether or not you've already taken the precepts, whether or not you're new to the precepts, we all sort of engage in this examination of precepts. And that precept study culminates in the ceremony of Jukai. So giving and receiving the precepts. And I think this next year, I believe Shintai will be offering the Jukai ceremony for those who would like to take the precepts. Shintai, can you give me a nod if you're on board for that?
We'll talk because I thought I gave it last time. So,
alrighty, we'll work this out.
But it's, I love giving precepts. I'd be happy to do it. I just don't want to hog it. So,
okay, we'll work that out before it's time to start precept study. We'll figure out who's doing this. I think we both enjoy it. So Jukai is usually mid-February-ish. Also around that time, maybe at the beginning of February, there is a celebration of Nehan, which celebrates and commemorates the Buddha's death and the teachings that he gave around his death. And there's, beautiful stories. Later in spring, we celebrate the Buddha's birth with Vesak. There are some Buddhist traditions that mark the Buddha's birth, death, and enlightenment all on the same day. And in our tradition, we spread it out over different days throughout the year. I think those are the big ones. We usually have a retreat wrapped around one of the fascicles of Dogen's writing, mid to late summer. But those are some of the festivals and ceremonies and retreats that sort of mark the progression of the year. And I really noticed the absence of these ceremonies in the year that I stepped out of the temple to do my chaplaincy training in the hospital. And I realized how much that these ceremonies sort of sunk into my bones. They marked the progression of a year, and they helped me connect with others in my Sangha who I knew would be celebrating these things, even if I couldn't. Um, working during Rohatsu, I knew others were sitting and I missed it a lot. So part of the oomph of this talk is also just recognizing um, that pang of wanting to practice with others and not being able to, perhaps. So why does this matter? Like, it matters, one, to stay connected. It matters because it helps us tell ourselves who we are as part of this Dharma cloud lineage. So, Dharma Rain and Brightway and Empty Field and Wy'East all might start talking about Sejiki around the beginning of October, getting ready for the end of October. And just knowing that these other practice places in our lineage are doing this warms my heart. There's a feeling of family. And it also helps just to have different markers in the year. Otherwise, practice can start feeling the same all the time. Just do the same thing every day. I get up, I sit zazen, I go to work, I come home, maybe I watch some TV, have a meal, go to bed, get up the next day, sit zazen, go to work, blah, 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 blah. I remember being a little kid and getting excited about Christmas is coming. Christmas is coming. Like having that anticipation. And like eventually after like years of Buddhist practice, like Christmas just didn't mean that much to me anymore. Maybe it was because I was a grown up. Maybe it was because I was just really identified with my Buddhist practice. But then I still wanted to have that sense of anticipation for something. Like, what is there for us? What is there for us? So I like our festivals. And I'm going to be trying to introduce more reminders about some of these markers throughout the year with this Sangha. I'm hoping some of you can help me remember to do that. And in terms of ways of bringing these aspects into your home, one, if you would like to join in a sesshin or a celebration or a festival, please feel free to do so. You can come to Dharma Rain, you can come to Brightway, you can go to Empty Field, wherever you want to go to practice. John, I don't know where you're going to go because you're way far away. I'm sure you'll find some place. I don't want you to feel left out. But even just knowing where these events occur in the calendar can help bring it home. And I would encourage you to find something that works for you in terms of perhaps putting something different on your altar. In the time of the Buddha's birth, putting something on your altar that represents something about the Buddha's birth, or at his death, something about his death, or a little pumpkin at the end of October, or a little cookie. You can also start off with an intention or end your day with a dedication. One of the things I've learned with term vows is that if you do something enough times, sometimes it starts to lose its meaning. I mean, it becomes habit, but then it just becomes habit, right? And it loses that specialness. So perhaps on festival days or celebration days, those are the days, there's a special dedication you do at the end of the day. And it can be simple. May all of the beneficial deeds I did today, may the merit of those deeds be offered to those who are hungry or in need of care. just offering the merit of something to those who might be able to use it. And if that's something you aspire to and forget normally, put that pin on a festival day. Um, maybe knowing that something is coming up. Oh, what's that thing that happens in March? Ask, send an email. I'll try to remind people, but I'm happy to talk with you about some of the meanings and rituals and images that happen with some of these festival days. I can't say how much that working with the changeableness of our liturgical cycle has been a benefit of practice to me. And, when it's time to do Sajiki, all of that energy goes into Sajiki. When it's time to do Rohatsu, all of the energy goes into Rohatsu. So we pick up and we put down. And just as the seasons change, the emphasis on our practice throughout the year changes. Just as, just as my friends who celebrate Christmas are getting all wound up mid-December, trying to get those last little bits of something to get for their buddies or their families, I'm relaxing because we just finished Rohatsu, and then the rest of the month is relaxation and peaceful. And I can work on Christmas Day so my Christian friends can be home with their families. It's very easy to do that. So the seasons change and the year changes and our practice changes. And coming around to these markers again, we see where we are in our practice in perhaps a new way. Oh, okay, it's Nehan again. I remember last Nehan, such and such happened. Oh, it's different this time. Something else is happening. I'm a different person. I have a different story to tell. I have a different sense of who I am. I have a different way of interacting with my Sangha when these festivals arise. So part of me is wanting to share all of this with you, and part of me is still feeling a little stymied about the best way to share that with you. And then a third part of me is stymied about whether you're even interested in this topic. So I think I want to stop there and invite some words and perspectives from you all to just help me and Shintai figure this out a little bit in terms of what is interesting and useful and what might be of benefit in terms of orienting towards this changing of seasons and this changing of the liturgical cycle.
I may be wrong, but I think we did Sajiki at least once. I really enjoyed it.
Did we?
I remember it. Whether or not it actually happened.
I have a very poor memory, so I will say yes. Okay, great. At least once.
I'm kind of wondering, Dixie, you came out to Dharma Rain. Did you do that at Dharma Rain, maybe instead of Wy'East?
No, that was Daijukai. I did it at Dharma Rain. That was quite an awe-inspiring ceremony to go through the entire thing. I didn't make it through all the days, but what I saw was, wow.
Yeah, there's a way of, there's a lot of symbolism in the ceremonies, but it's also a way of embodying some of that teaching.
How do you spell Suzuki?
Sejiki.
See,
S-E.
I'm having trouble with picking out the elements of the word unless you spell it for me.
S-E-J-I-K-I, which is, of course, transliterated from Japanese characters.
Okay, I think I've seen that word.
Hmm.
That's the end of October, last week of October.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that acknowledging the, this season of liturgy would be helpful in establishing well, a little more life, and also a sense of tradition in our sangha, and kind of bring it to life in a way. And I'm not saying it's not alive. I don't mean that at all. I think we have our own life and our own style, but also, as you said, sort of a way to, because I think of, I mean, we, like, there is this almost liturgical cycle with taking care of horses, which is a sacred thing for me. And it's similar to what you describe. It's like in the fall, we get out the blankets that we had cleaned during the summer, and you clip the horses. And in the winter, you do some schooling, and there's fox hunting. And then in the in the spring, you get vaccinations, and then in the summer there's the smell of fly spray, and it's similar like that. It's a very much embodied cycle. And I think in a similar way, we wouldn't do all the ceremonies, but even just acknowledging those special times would be a wonderful tradition to begin to establish.
Yeah. So that sounds like there's one vote for yes. Maybe
Yeah.
Dixie's. I'm two. Okay, one. I'm not proposing we take votes on this, but I'm just appreciating the interest.
I really, even just listening to you talk about it, it just makes me miss us gathering together so much. When we did things like Jukai or anything, just that container flowing as one, there's just I don't know, such a sweet element to it when we are integrating those kind of things. And I personally feel like us doing it in our group here at Wy'East, I don't know. I get anxiety when I go to, and I know ceremonies are happening at Dharma Rain, where at Wy'East, I wouldn't feel that much anxiety. At Dharma Rain, you've just got so many people and they're all moving the same direction. And I start worrying if I'm going to move the wrong direction or sing out when I'm not supposed to or something. So it just would, I think it would just be just totally awesome if we could integrate some of that into Wy'East.
How to do that on Zoom?
If I had infinite funds and possibilities, I'd send you all a Sajiki kit. We'd have your own karma slip. You'd have something to burn it in. You'd have, wouldn't it be great to just like, okay, here's your setup. Set up your little altar. But
all the little hands.
but that's a fantasy realm. But I just appreciate your bringing this up, Jyoshin, because it does really turn my mind to embodied practice. Like there's a way for me that there's something that just goes deep with the physical part of just doing, the processing around together, I've been missing just missing being in the Zendo where taking my seat, I bow to my seat and then I bow to the community and take my seat, and all those, all the teaching that comes through no words, through just the doing together and what we notice about each other and being together. So hang in there, people. Hang in there, Shintai. It's gonna be okay. We're gonna come together and figure it out. But it's been a long haul. I guess I just feel like saying that it's been a long haul, and it's really nice to keep that thread of possibility. It's not. We can still do it at home and find ways of connecting with that, but also with the possibility and promise really of coming together. So.
Yeah. Is there a way that we can, you can tell us what we need to have for our, for the Sabiki ceremony at home so we can do it? I mean, I don't know like how we would do it together on Zoom, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't remember having the ceremony at Wy'East. I don't even know what it, I have never participated, so I don't know what it really entails, except from what you've talked about. With Sajiki, there's a ceremony in the day and a ceremony in the evening of the last day of the retreat. And the ceremony during the day is complex. It involves a very elaborate altar that's filled with like cookies and donuts and all sorts of tasty treats. And there's elements from the fields and elements from the sea. And it's this very abundant it's a very abundant altar with all of these things that satisfy cravings, really. And all of the Buddha and Bodhisattva images are covered. And, there's a procession in and offerings made at this very elaborate donut covered altar. And there's a song that's sung only once a year when we do this ceremony. And then there's these special Dharanis that are chanted, that are only chanted during this one ceremony. And the idea behind the song and the Dharanis are that they open the gates to invite in hungry ghosts. They're saying, come in and partake of whatever you need to satisfy you. And there's ground rules. So there's ground rules in these chants as well. They're not in English, but the intent behind them is open the gates, invite in hungry ghosts, old karma, put some boundaries on them. And then we sit with, when the ceremony is done, if it had been a day when Dharma school kids would be there, the Dharma school kids will come and eat all the donuts off the altar. And hopefully the retreatants can snag a little corner of a donut before they all get eaten up by the kids. And at the end of the day, so that's a very explicit inviting in of old karma. At the end of the day, we have a bonfire, and everybody processes out of the zendo with these teeny tiny little bells that go tingle, 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 ding, 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 ding. And we process around the bonfire, and the Heart Sutra is chanted in Sino-Japanese, and there's another chant that's chanted in Sino-Japanese, the adoration of the Buddha's relics. And at certain parts in the chant, all of these little bells are rung in a very syncopated rhythm. And then the celebrant starts feeding, copies of the merit list into the fire. And during the day, everybody's had a chance to write down something that they want to let go of. So after the merit lists are burned, people come up one at a time and put their little karma slip into the fire. And they have the opportunity to burn something that they want to let go of. And then there's I don't even think there is a final dedication at the end of the night. And then everything just sort of relaxes after that. Usually people are tired. So I would say if you want to do this at home, you can cover the Buddha images on your altar. You can create a separate little altar with treats on it. And you can make some statement inviting in old karma and also holding some ground rules, like you can stay for today and we'll go at the end of the evening. And be willing to sit with whatever comes up. Give yourself the whole day just to be with whatever comes up. Then at the end of the day, after that elaborate altar has been taken down, and you've sat with your whatever's arising, at the end of the day, write down something that you would like to let go of, and find some way that works for you to release that. Whether it's burning it in a fireplace or a safe place where you can burn something, or completely shredding it, or releasing it somehow such that it transforms, perhaps sending it down a stream so it transforms, gets soaked up into the water, soaks into the paper, and it completely dissolves. So there's ways you can sort of adapt those forms or those meanings to whatever situation you're in. But it's really important, like part of the key things with that is that if you're inviting in old ghosts, you need to have some way to say, okay, go back home now. Like if you haven't completely been satisfied and received what you've needed, you can't stay here. Like just psychologically, it's good form to close that back up after you've opened it. Does that make sense? Do I have any ideas that you might be able to incorporate?
Last year I did Sajiki from home.
What'd you do?
And there were actually, most people who participated were doing it via Zoom at Dharma
That's true.
anyway. And, for the fire, we all had a fire in our little Zoom screen. Everyone pretty much figured out how to make a fire in their little home situation. And so it's kind of like this, we weren't standing around in the cold together the way it's typically done at Dharma anyway. But there was a sense of doing it in Sangha because you could see the other people on the screen and you could see their fires and everything. So, it wasn't the same, but nothing is the same in a pandemic. And
yeah. And I'll say that we're not the only Sangha that doesn't have a physical place to meet together anymore. I know many Sanghas who, in the pandemic, gave up their physical spaces and are adapting to Zoom spaces. So it's doable to do these adaptations. I'm really glad you brought that up, Camille, because I have no idea what happened last year. So I'm glad people found a way to do it. Yeah, Tika.
Could we not burn our merit lists I have a big fireplace. I could put my computer in that room and could we not burn our merit lists for in that way? No, it sounds like you're trying to think how that would be.
Well, I'm thinking about sort of how, like, there's different layers of ritual and symbolism. there's different part of me wants to say it's, part of me wants to say it's helpful if there's a teacher there, and part of me wants to say, yeah, sure, go ahead.
I mean, that would be you guys' call for sure. I don't know, but or a teacher could be there if they wanted to be.
Well, I'll be
Or
leading Sajiki at Dharma Rain, so
yeah,
it couldn't be me. Let's talk about it at the planning meeting tomorrow. Let's see what we can do to adapt some common something for Wy'East. I'll drop that on a.
Yeah.
Could there be
You-
anyone who's a teacher that could help with that? And we could do it on Zoom and like Emily said, do it. You could even have a little dish and burn your things with a candle or something, for people who
I
didn't
don't-
have a fireplace.
Mhm.
But it would be nice to be led somehow, because for those of us who've never done it before.
Mm-hmm. Well, the planning committee is meeting tomorrow, and let's drop that on that agenda, and we'll see what we can figure out.
I love that
And-
people are interested in burning things. I feel like that's gotten
Yes.
everybody's attention.
Yes.
It's like, how can we, let's do that. Let's do that. I would like to let some stuff go, please. So I'm all for that, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
I
We
would just,
burn- Go
sorry.
ahead. No, go
I
ahead.
would just add that, the point that Jyoshin was making about in the morning inviting in, or at the beginning of the retreat, whatever part of it you're doing. One thing that I have found helpful in my practice is to know that I'm inviting in old karma with spiritual friends. And so for me, what has been powerful about that burning at the end of the day is the sense that I don't do this alone. Like, it's my practice and I'm responsible for my practice, and I choose what karma I want to burn, but I'm doing it with the support of the Sangha. And so I think for me, Sajiki, what was hard about doing it for my house was that even though I knew other people were doing it, it was still weird to not do it in the physical presence of Sangha.
Mhm.
But that's just my comparing mind.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I was speaking to about. It connects with others who are practicing, having these certain dates or things that we can orient around.
I wanted to mention, since I've got the list that I print off when I'm presenter, we've got 2 different things that we're committing to the fire. These 8.5 by 11 printed merit lists and a little slip that might represent the karma that an individual would like to let go of. I'll just mention that. Keep me in the loop, because I've got these printed things and I already put it on the calendar to bring them to Dharma Rain. So I won't if we're going to do something different.
We'll talk it over tomorrow and then fill people in. Is somebody else going to say something?
I was just going to say, it might be that we as a Sangha didn't do it on exactly the same date that Dharma Rain does it. It's the practice itself that's sacred, not necessarily the exact date, if I'm understanding correctly. So
Yeah.
I don't know, just a thought.
No, that's a really good point, Lexi. I had sort of forgotten about that part. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, this has been a very rich and fruitful discussion. Thank you so much for lending your voices to it and helping shape how practice develops at Wy'East. Please make Gasho. The universe is as the boundless sky, just as the lotus is not wetted by the water that surrounds it. The mind is immaculate and beyond the dust. Let us bow to the highest Lord. all Buddhas throughout space and time, all honored ones, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, maha prajna paramita. Thank you all. Good night, good night.
Thank you, Jyoshin.
Good night. Thank you.
Right.
It was great. I'm really glad you did that. Good
Yeah.
night, Lexi.
Hi, Penny.
Everybody just goes poof, 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 poof.
Poof, 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 poof. I'm the host, so I'm waiting till everybody's gone poof, poof, poof.
Well, you can poof me out too.
Yeah, I can end the meeting too. So
I always like at least say something to somebody at the end,
Right,
like
right.
I'm saying goodbye, you know.
right. I
It's kind
know.
of like- when everyone just goes poof, it's like being at a gathering and then going poof.
Yeah.
So good night and
Good
have a
night.
good evening.
All right. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.